For Portage Online News, I'm Mike Bloom today with Portage La Prairie Mayor Sherilyn Knox. With the upcoming provincial election on October 3rd, can you share with us what you'd like to see addressed from a municipal perspective?
We're just announced in our riding that we have 4 candidates running, which is exciting because we want to make sure that we're represented in this election and that we're hearing from all parties for sure. As municipalities, we definitely have important things that we look for because our needs are somewhat different than the individual in the fact that we're representing whole communities, and we work very closely with the provincial government, whoever that is. The Association of Manitoba Municipalities, we work with them and we focus on what are the priorities across the province. And so they have a campaign called Let's Grow Manitoba Together, where they've worked with all of the municipalities, talked about what your priorities are, and we've talked about what would be those priorities that would best serve all of the municipalities across Manitoba. So some of those are absolutely municipal funding. You may remember, Mike, that the municipal funding freeze ended in this past year. That was in place for 7 years, which was great news for municipalities. We want to make sure that we see really great funding models that continue for municipalities, because just like everyone else, we need to do more with less these days. So we not only need to see the increase continue, but we need to see escalators so that as things change, that we're seeing more money come to municipalities from the province. So we'd like to see that a priority of whoever forms government for sure. The others are investing in infrastructure. It's never always the most fancy thing or the most exciting thing we talk about, but waste and water are very important to municipalities, including Portage La Prairie. We are considered the hub of wet industry in our province, and so having really great wastewater and water infrastructure is very important to us. So we need to see the provincial government commit to those type of projects, but also we need to see them work with us to work with the federal government on those type of projects and see it be priorities. We also need to see just some efficiencies improve in the provincial government. We often talk about the municipal government level. We can be very fast moving on things that we need to happen. And sometimes we find there's efficiencies that slow us down, especially when it comes to economic development. So we want to make sure that all those departments that are involved are communicating and working very well together. So whoever forms government, we want that to be a priority for them as well. And to work with municipalities and listen to municipalities about what those efficiencies need to be. Because what's good for a municipality is good for our entire province. Investing in people is another one that we want to. We're seeing some really great healthcare infrastructure, such as the new hospital going up in Portage La Prairie for Southern Health, a new hospital in Neepawa going up, a new hospital in the north. Great. We love infrastructure. We need the new hospital. Now we need to make sure that a focus is on filling that with the workers that we need, right? It's not going to be, if you don't have a building where you have nurses and doctors and professionals in there, then it's not going to be what we need. So we need commitment to making things better for our nurses in our province, for our doctors to retain them. We have seen the government work on training more doctors in our province, which is great, but we also need to really rely on foreign trained professionals, whether that's nurses or doctors. So we need that commitment from whoever's in government to continue on with some of those immigration challenges, because we often find it's not necessarily the province that's slowing things down. It could be the professional associations or the accreditation that's doing that. So the government that's formed need to work with those associations to help that we can get trained people here to fill the spots that we need. We also, of course, you and I often talk about public safety. It's a concern across our province. It's a concern across the country. When it comes to the provincial government, we need to see a real commitment. We have seen some really great things happening for municipalities. As you know, Portage just received funding specifically for public safety that we know we're working on what we're going to do with that, and it's giving us some really great jump ahead to what we need to do, and it's exciting to not have to worry about that or not to put it on to our ratepayers and taxpayers for them to fund it. But you also know we've had the issue where the RCMP retroactive costs, where Portage la Prairie has a bill of $975,000 that happened because there was a negotiation with the RCMP for improved wages, etc., which I support. I support what the RCMP received as into what they needed. However, that went down to the municipalities to have to pay, where we weren't at the table, we weren't involved in it, but yet it was put on us. So we need the provincial government to help us ensure that that downloading doesn't happen, right? It's the federal government that we have to pay for that. But we need them to support us on those things and to make sure that some of those costs don't keep downloading onto municipalities. Also, public safety on the provincial level is public safety is not only enforcement. Enforcement is one level of public safety. Addictions, mental health, poverty, those are public safety issues. Recreation is a public safety issue. We need young people to be involved in meaningful activities. So the more money and the more funds and resources we put into those things, then the more we're going to have young people involved and hopefully choosing a life of not crime.
The MLAs are going to be decided upon as well.
Yeah.
And could you give maybe advice to Portagers about MLAs, who to vote for, not the person, not each party or whatever, like, but what we need to see that MLA do, and to keep that in mind when we vote for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We need, in Portage la Prairie, we need somebody who understands our community, who really understands all facets of our community, in my opinion. We need somebody who not only understands what happens in our downtown city center, we need somebody who can represent the farmers in our region, because we're not just the city of Portage la Prairie. We need someone who has a strong voice, who has some great experience. We need somebody who sees the big picture of our community. One thing I want citizens of Portage to ask the candidates, or you, the media, to ask the candidates, what if their party is elected or they're elected, what are their thoughts on MDC? MDC is set to close in early 2024, close its use right now. But there is assets there, there's buildings there, there's land there that can be repurposed into something very, very positive for our community. There are jobs there that we don't want to see go away. So we really want to see the provincial government have a plan for what they're going to do for that facility. This has been talked about ever since the announcement of the closure. And you know, we hear different things about it, and we give lots of ideas, and we're hopeful that something will happen, but we want to see whoever forms government that that's a priority for them. So as you can see, the needs of Portage la Prairie aren't much different than other municipalities in the province. We really need whoever forms provincial government to be the partner to municipalities, because we are the daily, what we do affects people on a daily life. It's the water that comes out of their taps. It's what goes down their drains. It can be things like infrastructure for roads and lighting, right? We know the provincial government is a partner in our Saskatchewan Avenue project, right? So we need to have those partners. And I think that this is an exciting election for the province as a whole because there are so many issues that need to be addressed. I just think it's important when you're going out to vote that you really look at what's important to you, what's important to municipalities, and also most importantly that you get out and vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned about the hospital
Yeah.
and the shortage happening, and like I've got a daughter right now that's going to have a child during this nurse shortage.
Right.
And yet there's a big new hospital being built.
Yeah.
And then you already covered this as well, the catch and release issue with public safety.
Yeah.
And MDC, it's been a while since that was announced, and yet we've heard nothing about what's going to be done from the province.
Yeah.
So these are like three really big issues.
Yep, that's right. The MDC issue, I can tell you that it's definitely something we talk about to the provincial government on a regular basis, and so we know that for sure. It's not something that we as a municipality stop talking about because it's very important to us.
It's sort of like the province is being quiet about it, or
Yeah, at this point too, for sure. But we hope to see that there'll be something that will come out that will say that it's going to be repurposed because they need to be fiscally responsible. They've continued to put funds into those buildings and keep them going, and so the infrastructure's there, and it would be perfect for someone to take over and reutilize those facilities for sure. Lots of ways that they could too. I look at just in a grand scheme of things, right, of the ideas that have come out from, whether it's from community members, municipality, we look at addictions treatment, we look at mental health, we look at seniors, right? We look at education. There's lots of different opportunities for those facilities out there.
And the Food Development Center, there's an issue there too?
Yeah, they're same thing. They're changing and moving. It's a typical of pushing of resources to different places, yeah. And so we, just like when we lost the Agassiz Youth Center, right? It was one of those, and whether that was, have opinions on that decision, but again, as you know, the land has now become the cities and the buildings that are still existing there, and so we're doing everything we can to see if there's any opportunities out there for those buildings to be repurposed before we have them, before they're gone, right? And then we have to decide what we're going to do there too. But those are great things happening in our community, and so we hope that we'll see things continue there.
And maybe we can end off by talking about what the average Portager can do when the MLA is voted in, and talk to him about these issues. How important is the voice of the average Portage la Prairie person?
Incredibly important, because number one, just like me, that's who the citizens are, who the MLA is going to represent, right? So they have to be open to hearing what people say. I think it's important too, I always say this about people running for municipal politics, is that you have to have the big picture of what you're looking at. You can't be single-minded issues, you can't be this, because I always say it's going to be a long few years if you've only single-minded issues, because there's a lot more that go on than that. But get out there, like I know we're probably going to hear things coming up where you can hear these people speak. Take the time to do that. When they come to your door, when they knock on your door, talk to them, have questions, see what they have to say, and make sure that, I'm a politician that I don't like politics where all I'm doing is pointing out what other people are doing wrong. I want people to know what we're going to do, because that's how I think we're going to move forward. So if you have somebody that's only pointing out what other people are doing wrong, then challenge them, find out what they feel needs to happen in our community or how they'd represent it. Because no matter what happens, an MLA, whoever, just for an example, let's say an NDP person was elected here in Portage la Prairie, but maybe the Liberals form government. So that person's role changes completely too, right? Because they're not part of the form government, so they have to be a voice for our municipality in a different way. So are people ready for that as well?